Welcome to Kid Care Canada, Conversations with Kid Care Canada. I'm your host, Estelle Paget, and with us in the studio, we have two experts for today's topic, which is today's families. And why are they experts? Because one's a dad and one's a mum. I'm happy to welcome Dave Gamble.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Hi, Dave. It's lovely to have you. One of the things we've been doing in this series is asking people, even before they tell us who they are, if they have a key message for us and for viewers.
I think for me, it's forgive yourself, the past is behind you.
We'll come back to that, but first, could I ask you to say a few words about who you are, and so that people have a sense?
Sure. My name's Dave Gamble, and I'm a father of 3 children, 10, 8, and 6, and our oldest is a boy, and then 2 girls followed, so I have the neat experience of watching my kids grow up.
It's great. I will say that in the conversations that you and I have had, inevitably we come around to this role of father, and it has been so obvious to me that you are a very committed dad and you think about it a lot.
Yes, perhaps sometimes too much.
So let's come back to that key message. Forgive yourself, the past is behind you. Where did that come from?
I guess for me it was from situations with the children where perhaps I was not in the best space and gave them words or actions that I wasn't so proud of, and I would find that would sometimes carry with me to the next interaction with the child. So I'm carrying that forward and doing some thinking, watching how my kids interact with me. I think that was in the past for them, so I learned from them and said, I have to leave that behind and approach them with that positive way that I want to be each and every time. And whatever mistake I made yesterday, that was yesterday, and today's a new day.
Have you ever had a situation where you felt that the child hadn't forgotten it and that there was something lingering there that you needed to deal with?
My middle child, yes, she is a deep thinker, and she told me, and I actually didn't even put a lot of weight in the comment that I made to her, but it obviously had an impact on her. And she was willing to share the feedback with me of how it occurred to her and how it hurt her feelings. So, between a little bit of tears on my part and, sitting with her and talking to her and thanking her for sharing that with me and really wanting to support that side of her, that she was willing to come forward and share how that felt and not hide from it or pretend it didn't happen. So
you have really created open communications with your children.
That's a really strong goal of ours, is to have that available to them, that space, that healthy space. We often do things around the dinner table, holding hands and asking questions of each other and trying to create a space where the kids, because our fear, I guess every parent's fear, is what happens when they're teens and they're not willing to share with their parents. We're really trying now, building the foundation so we're not in that space, or hopefully not in that space, where they'll still share with us the challenges and things that they face as they grow into adults.
So it sounds like you not only are working on open communications with your children, but also with your wife.
Well, I think to be aligned on the same way we're talking to our kids, opening up that free space, and I also think having a comfortable enough relationship where we can critique each other or possibly offer feedback on how we might approach a situation differently than we did. Just learn from it and see what maybe we'll get a better outcome than what we did.
This is really very interesting and admirable, I have to say, and it really fits in well with the research, which shows that the relationships that are forged very early in life really do carry through and have an impact throughout life. But I'm just thinking, when going back to when your kids were little, do you think that you were the same with them then as you are now?
I think I care about them the same way, but I think the way that I work with their needs, what their wants are, what their aspirations are, is different because, as a baby, it's change me and feed me. And now that, my oldest is, approaching teenagehood, his needs are radically different than they were when he was 2. So it's trying to be open to what their needs are and being clean in how we offer their needs to be met without perhaps creating that entitlement that I think can happen by maybe spoiling a kid. So it's always a tough balance.
One of the themes that seems to come through when I speak with you too is that you learn from your children, and you've alluded to it already today. Yeah. We have a video which talks a little bit about what babies can teach us, and we'll take a look at that video now.
The arrival of a baby is like having a live-in Zen master parachuted into your home. As any reputable Zen master will do, is going to push every single one of your buttons. Every place where you have any kind of attachment that things should be a certain way, you're going to find out that things don't necessarily have to be the way you think they have to be. This is an enormously powerful lesson for us if we can be open to it, so that rather than forcing the baby to conform immediately to your particular desires, that actually it'd be much better to give yourself over to listening very, very deeply to what the baby's true needs are. Meditate, if you will, on who this creature is, and let them teach you everything that you need to provide to allow for a healthy relationship that's not going to be healthy just for a month or 2 or 3 or 4, but it's going to be healthy over days, weeks, months, years, decades, and basically, hopefully, the rest of your lives together. That's very, very powerful. And to start off on the sort of a good footing, with that kind of intention to see who this baby is and to not know who the baby is and to appreciate the adventure of finding out, and also having that baby in some sense reflect who you are. And you may be finding out a lot about yourself that you didn't even know was there in terms of paternal instincts or maternal instincts that might come out. This is a tremendously wonderful opportunity to experience love in a way that has profound purity to it. And so to really begin to see how much love there is in you as you connect with this, and notice all the different ways that you connect. It's not simply through touch, but it can be through sounds, it can be through gaze, it can be through motion, and to really allow oneself to be aware of the different aspects of this relationship and what it's bringing out in you. It's a tremendous period of joy. This kind of awareness of parenting, which I sometimes call mindful parenting, is a kind of process of nurturing our children in the number of ways that we're called to nurture our children, and at the same time, in the best and deepest of ways, in ways that are almost impossible to do in any other way, growing ourselves as well. Don't let your anxiety inhibit the joy or suppress the joy, if you will. If you need to get some kind of information about how to hold the baby, make sure that the neck is supported and so forth, yes, by all means, there are many people, including the grandparents, who can give you that kind of advice. But I would say, to a large degree, trust your instincts and be as gentle and as present as possible. The babies that I know are completely present from the moment of birth, and they are in some sense calling out to us for a kind of relationality that confirms and affirms who they are, and that actually influences their biological development virtually hour by hour in the early hours. That doesn't mean that you have to be uptight about it or worry about it. Your natural instincts come out as a parent, and they're very, very much in line with attunement and caring.
We've just heard from Dr. John Kabat-Zinn about mindfulness and about being a parent, and we're going to see what Dave Gamble has to say about that. Dave, what stood out for you from that?
One of the things that stood out for me was anxiety and what can happen to us as parents. And I guess situation for me is when we had little kids, back to when they were babies, was when it was my turn to go in to change the diapers or feed or what have you. And when the baby was really, really crying a lot, I found that had it built up inside me, that it would start to frustrate me because I've only got so many hours of sleep or whatever that is. And we read in one of the books around dads wearing earplugs, just to have a quick set of foam earplugs, and what a difference that made to my abilities to manage that situation when I didn't have such a high volume coming in my ears. The anxiety was much reduced. So that's a great tip for any dad out there that finds the screaming challenging.
That actually is a great tip. Another tip from a different dad is he was concerned. He's also a family physician, so he sees lots of new parents. And he was saying that sometimes dads don't feel that immediate bond with a baby that mums often feel. And he said he would really like parents to know, especially dads, that doesn't necessarily happen right away, and they shouldn't worry about it because it does develop and the joy does come, but they shouldn't feel guilty if they don't feel it right away.
Yeah, I think that's true, and especially if mom is breastfeeding, there's a lot of bonding that happens between mom and child, and I guess maybe we just wait our turn till we get a moment.
So what would you say about the difference between roles for parents if it's a couple where there's a mother and a father?
I think maybe what I would speak to is what I find with my son. I think there's a definite place where he really looks for the things that mom gives to him, and then he very strongly looks for a lot of the perhaps male things from me. So there's definitely two parts of his psyche, it seems, that are filled, one by my wife and one by me.
In the video that we just saw, there was a lot about that we can learn from our children. And I know you've mentioned that you learn a lot from your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you wanted to share with us about
Just
that?
the most recent one. It's a kind of a funny one. We play around with remote control cars, my son and I, and they often break, and you carry around your spare parts. And there's a process to fix this one thing, and we go through it. And he had broken it, and I said, well, it's up to you to fix it. And he got 3/4 of the way through, and I looked, and he had found a considerably quicker way of doing it than what I had taught him. And so now I have a new way of doing it.
And that's a fairly concrete example, but I would say that there are also very many that are subtle. I can remember when my daughter was 13, she said to me, you know, I think there'd be a lot fewer problems in this world if everybody was more empathetic.
Yeah. Out of the mouths of babes, eh?
Right, yeah, exactly. We've talked a little bit about anxiety. Is anxiety something that you've seen in children as well?
Yes, most definitely once they get into for us anyways, when they get into the school years of how they're interacting, how other kids are acting. You know, some of the new stuff we're dealing with is the amount of potty words, as we call it, that are being used around our kids, you know, by other peer groups that maybe have that more in their dialogue than our kids do, and trying to explain to them what the difference is of why we choose not to use those words in our family. And it actually makes one of our kids very uncomfortable when they're around those words. So
I wish we could continue this conversation, but our time has come. And I would like to thank you very, very much for being with us today.
Absolute pleasure to be here. You're doing great work.
We're going to have a short break. We'll be back in a few minutes with our second guest, Amy Ho, a mum, to talk about today's families.
A child's early years are foundational for lifelong mental and physical health. Kid Care Canada Society is a charitable organization incorporated in the province of British Columbia. We seek to empower families to raise their children to be socially and emotionally healthy, and ensure families and those who support them have easy access to relevant, current research at no cost to the end user. Our appealing videos, now being captioned in various languages, feature world-renowned experts and real families. To access these videos and other free resources, log on to kidcarecanada.org.
Welcome back to Conversations with Kid Care Canada. Today's topic is today's families, and we are so pleased to welcome our second guest, Amy Ho. Amy, thank you for coming.
Oh, glad to be here.
Amy, one of the things we've been doing with all of our guests, even before introductions, is asking them to share a key message for our viewers. Is there one that you would like to share?
Yes, I think it is it's our responsibility as parents to provide a loving, caring environment for our children.
Ah, that is a very lovely message, one that's not always easy to do, and we'll talk about some of the challenges that can get in the way of doing that. But would you say a few words about who you are now so everyone can get to know you a little bit?
Yeah, I'm a mother of two. I have 2 children. The older one, Casey, he was born in Hong Kong, and he came to Canada when he was about 3.5 years old. And then my second one, Rosalind, she was born here just 2 months after we landed in Canada. And well, when she was about 7 months old, we found out that she has profound hearing loss.
So you were a new immigrant, you just arrived in Canada, you already had a preschool child, and then you found out that your baby had profound hearing loss.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Wow. I mean, there's so much to take in. I was very sad because I wasn't too sure if we would be able to communicate with our baby because she couldn't hear. And it seems to me at that time that we learn, my older child also, he learns language by listening. And so how are we going to teach my daughter something, language, so that she can communicate with us? So, that is the biggest challenge.
And who helped you on that journey?
We're very lucky in BC. BC has the best early intervention programs, I think, in the country. So we've got a lot of help from the early intervention agency we enrolled in. It's a very family approach center. They guide us through, and then we began to know that sign language is another way to go. And so we felt that while she cannot hear, she can see. So we can make use of her vision to learn a visual language to help us communicate with her and she with us. And communication is something that we value in our family. I just can't imagine if we can't communicate with our kids. So when she was small, we used sign language as well as spoken English to her.
So you had to learn sign language. What was that like for you?
At first, I thought it was going to be difficult, but then we took the sign language classes at the early intervention center. The instructor also had a daughter who has severe hearing loss, so we kind of have that kind of rapport, and she kept encouraging us that, to start with, babies really don't need to learn complex sentence or whatever, so you can just kind of learn just a few steps ahead of your baby, then you'll be fine. So we were learning those words, names of objects that we usually need to talk to babies. So just gradually learning more and more, and then my baby also learned more. So it's kind of we sign to her, we speak to her, she signed it back before she could produce any intelligible speech sounds to us. So it's very reinforcing. So it's kind of back and forth. And because she was such a small baby, she's actually really tiny,
yes.
petite. So it kind of we have to be patient. So we will sign, we'll watch her. And I think there's this close eye contact and everything that just established a very good rapport between us, baby and me, baby and daddy, baby and big brother.
You talked a lot about the importance of building a loving environment,
yes.
And that's a video that you've chosen to show. So we're going to watch that video right now. Let's watch that video.
Although there are many questions that we don't know the answers to, but I think we can already say the following advice. First is try to build a loving, kind environment for your children at all levels, from your mother-child interaction to the mother-husband interaction to the mother-larger family interaction. The child has to get signals that he is coming to a loving and kind world, and he will be loving and kind. You should reduce stress as much as possible. Work on it. And if you are stressed, try not to expose it to your child. The third thing is try to choose an environment that is not stressful. And when you choose a workplace, consider that. Consider the amount of stress at work and the impact that it will have on your child. Raising children is extremely tough. Biology taught us that we are mammals, which means that mothers are extremely important. and we cannot ignore the role. So a mother that chooses to bring a child to this world has to consider this and has to make all the choices around this with this biological information as paramount. Biology also told us that we need attachment, and we need attachment that is strong, and kindness can create in that environment. So, in a nutshell, we know that a stressful environment in childhood can have severe consequences at all levels, from risk for cancer down to behavioral consequences. And we also know that we can protect our children by creating a loving and less stressful environment. So, in a nutshell, that's the message.
This video has so many key messages in it. Amy, what speaks to you from that video?
The importance of like having a good relationships at all levels, like parents and babies, children, husband and wife, and also mother with the larger family interaction. And I mean, this last one really fits in the Chinese culture because we respect our elders. We usually have big families, extended families, and with immigrants, a lot of time, grandparents will offer and visit the family here and offer their help. So, and I mean, obviously with the West and the East, Asian and Western culture, there are bound to be differences in raising children. So it's very important to maintain that harmony, that agreement, while the whole family are under the same roof, in the same house. Yeah, so.
From what you've told me, I know that in your case, your parents were so supportive. Can you remember what they said to you when you told them about Rosalind and her being deaf?
Yeah. I mean, I was in tears, naturally. But my parents are very supportive, and they would just say, I'm sure you can do it. You will do well. Things will go well. Just don't be so upset. And then my father would try to, I think he didn't try to. He just noticed that Rosalind was doing something that really amazed him. So he would tell me, oh, well, I can tell you, she's very smart. And I don't think I really noticed what my father noticed. And then years later, when Rosalind graduated from UBC, and then my father didn't come to attend the graduation ceremony, but over the phone, he would relate what he told me when Rosalind was a baby and kept saying that, I told you, so you don't have to be so sad back then. You could have been, I mean, more relaxed when you were younger with your baby.
What can you tell me about Rosalind and her friends who have often very severe hearing loss? What kind of young people are they today?
Well, I find that they are all very happy in their role, in whatever they are doing. Some are very good in sports, some in computer design, and some, just doing a job that he enjoys, like being a responsible employee, doing shelving in a supermarket, and then after work they hang out together. They care about each other. And I could remember one year that it really touched me. What Rosalind's friends had done for her. I was in Hong Kong, and it was her birthday, and then my husband was somewhere, maybe on another business trip, I couldn't remember, and it was her birthday, and she was just alone in the university dorm, and her friends just text her because they couldn't use the phone, just text her that, we're coming to your dorm to see you, the apartment. She was staying in a studio at that time, and we're coming to see you, is that okay? And Rosalind said, oh yeah, I'm kind of like home alone. And then they kind of like celebrate her birthday party, bringing all the food there. So that kind of friendship, really, yeah.
And so those early worries actually did not turn out to be disastrous, though they weren't really necessary because she's a very happy person.
Yeah.
we would love to know more about this, and perhaps you could send us some information that we will post to our website. But for now, I'm going to say thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us for Conversations with KidCare Canada. If you'd like to learn more, log on to kidcarecanada.org. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. Remember, we're here to support you on your journey as a parent.